Are you preparing for a speech and want to go from good to great? Well, if so, then watch this entire video because I'm going to walk you through 5 of my favorite techniques to deliver a great speech. So the first thing that I do is I focus on the narrative arc. Okay, what do I mean by narrative arc? I mean that you're imagining your audience having a certain emotion or feeling. It's point A, and you want them to get all the way to point B, right? That transformation can come through a series of short stories, right? Where each story has its own takeaway for your audience, and you build up there. And one of my favorite things to do is I like to tee up my introduction to orient them around the transformation I want them to go through. So for example, I was actually giving a speech as a best man to my best friend's wedding the other day, and I went through this very quick intro of, look, they're friends, they're very good friends, there are best friends, and then there are just absolute slobs. And I want to show you how our relationship progressed from friendship to absolute slobs together. Right? It's funny. It's meant to be humorous, but the point is I'm progressing towards the slob pinnacle. And I'm telling that narrative with stories, right? Short stories to get from point A to point B. All right, now what's the next one? This one is, again, a nuance, but I want you to take me to a scene. Take me to a scene. When you're giving a speech, one of your best things you can do is to almost be like a narrator of a movie. Describe the detail, and in particular, give me dialogue, right? So my mother told me, Preston, you can come out of the room. Don't worry about it. You're going to be late for school. And I said, I don't want to go, Mom. Every time I leave this room, I'm always panicked. Why? She asked. I said, because the moment I get to school, people immediately start calling me a yellow boy and making fun of me and trying to draw all over my skin because I'm not white. Dang, well, that's dialogue that's heavy. But either way, it transports you. When you say, oh, my mom said this, then I said that, then she said this, then I said that, you're literally ping-ponging back and forth and having your audience along for the ride every step of the way. So dialogue is really helpful, all right, to take me to a scene. Third thing that I like to do whenever I'm trying to go from good to great, avoid the script. Avoid the script, right? A lot of folks will try to read off a script. What I want you to do is I want you to embody the message. So your story should be narrated not just from your words, it should be with your body. And you can't do that if you're reading from a script. So going back to that first example of the narrative arc right here, okay? I can't really demonstrate this to you right here over video, but just imagine this is the stage, right? And so as I'm progressing the story, I'm literally walking across the stage, right? To tell this story, then to tell this story, then to tell this story. And I'm taking command of the stage, right? So when you really are working the room, you're working the room to tell that story. And you might stop, you might make eye contact with this person and then this person. Then when you have a really heavy point that you want to sink in, you lock eye contact with this person for 5 seconds. But either way, your body language is strategic. It's strategic to show the narrative. It's strategic to let an important point sink in. It's strategic to ask a question from the crowd so that they stay engaged, whatever it is. Your tactics are not just off of a script. They're connecting with your audience. Okay, what about the fourth one? The fourth takeaway around being a great speech giver, I think you want to be very clear about what you're going to tell them. Be clear about what you're going to tell them, right? You can lead off however you want. You can say, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you this story about X, Y, and Z, or oh, I'm going to ask this question, but it should all culminate to the topic. I want to tell you why this person is an absolute slob and someone I'll never want to part with for the rest of my life. Or let me tell you why everything that I just explained catapulted me into, frankly, the next stage of my career. Whatever it is, you're previewing the important content. Because what this does is it anchors your audience to something that they can latch onto, right? Throughout your entire talk. It's the anchor. What's the fifth thing? The fifth thing that I like to do is I like to insert unanswered questions. It's a very simple tactic. It's essentially a transition statement. It's a transition from one story to the next. For example, in my speech for my best man, I would tell a story, right, about how he was a very good friend. How did I realize he was a very good friend of mine? There's a story. Then I said, but how did I know that he would be my best friend? Right? And that segues me to the next story. But what you're doing is when you're creating these unanswered questions in your audience's mind, these are literally dopamine hits. Dopamine hits, because everyone in your audience wants to be able to scratch that itch. It's like, oh, there is this first state, there's this end state, but how do we get there? How do we get there? How do we get there? And that's how you keep your audience engaged. But if you just kind of go through the monologue, you don't have any pauses, you're not asking these questions, these hypothetical questions of your audience, these rhetorical questions of your audience, then you're not going to get as far. So I hope that all those tips help you just go from good to great on your next speech so that you can command the room and command respect. All right, have a good one. Thanks.